License and registration. That was dangerous riding.
I didn't hit anyone.
You came close. Keys out. Hands where I can see them.
I'm not.
Hey, stop! Police, get down!
Atlanta's downtown corridor is a furnace of noise and motion. Exhaust fumes hang heavy in the afternoon heat. Horns layer over horns. Tires hiss against sun-baked asphalt. Light fractures off 100 windshields at once. The patrol car's dash cam, wide fisheye lens, unblinking, captures everything. Red and blue strobes ignite. A black motorcycle threads between two sedans with surgical precision. The siren wails. After a long pause, the rider eases toward the curb beside a row of parked cars. The officer's boots hit pavement, heavy, deliberate. License and registration. That weaving was dangerous riding. The rider keeps both hands visible on the handlebars, voice completely level. Officer, there was no violation. Voices sharpen. The temperature between the two men spikes faster than the Atlanta heat. The officer lunges. The rider is slammed hard against the parked car beside him. Stop! Police! Boots scramble on concrete. A metallic crash as the motorcycle tips and falls, engine cutting out mid-growl. Cuffs ratchet shut amid grunts and heavy breathing. The rider never raises his voice, never swings, never runs. He simply recites, calm, deliberate, almost clinical, the precise legal consequences the officer is creating for himself with every second those cuffs stay locked. But the man in those cuffs is no ordinary motorcyclist. He is the Honorable Elijah Thompson, sitting United States District Judge, Northern District of Georgia, a man who has spent his entire career ensuring that what just happened to him cannot happen to anyone else. If that opening has you leaning forward, drop a comment right now. Where are you watching from? And subscribe immediately, because this story doesn't get simpler as it unfolds. It gets heavier. Every layer of power, bias, and accountability you're about to see is real, documented, and still unfolding. Elijah Thompson is 38 years old. He did not arrive at the federal bench through privilege or political connection. He grew up in southwest Atlanta, Cascade Heights, in a household where his mother worked double nursing shifts and his father drove a city bus for 27 years. He watched his father get pulled over 11 times in those same Atlanta streets, 11 stops, 0 citations that ever held up. He never forgot the way his father's hands looked on the steering wheel during those stops, perfectly still, perfectly controlled, carrying a weight that had nothing to do with traffic. Thompson put himself through Morehouse College on academic scholarships and financial aid. He earned his law degree from Georgetown. Then he spent a decade as a civil rights litigator, not the kind who took celebrity cases, but the kind who showed up for the anonymous ones, the bus driver wrongfully searched, the teenager detained outside a convenience store, the grandmother whose door was kicked in on a bad address warrant. In those 10 years, he never lost sight of what the law was supposed to protect. 2 years ago, the President of the United States nominated him to the federal bench. The Senate confirmed him. He became, at 36, one of the youngest sitting U.S. district judges in Georgia history. His record across 47 cases involving police conduct is spotless, every ruling grounded in precedent, transparent in reasoning, without favoritism in either direction. He has ruled against plaintiffs in cases where evidence didn't support their claims. He has ruled against departments when it did. He does not perform justice, he practices it. And every single morning, he rides that black motorcycle to the federal courthouse on Spring Street. No motorcade, no security detail, no flashing lights announcing his arrival. Just a briefcase, a helmet, and the same commute that thousands of Atlantans make every day. He has said in a previous interview that the ride keeps him honest. "When I sit on that bench," he said, "I need to remember what the street feels like. The bench can insulate you. The bike doesn't." On the afternoon of March 18th, he would discover exactly how right he was. Sergeant Derek Harlan is 45 years old, 18 years with the Atlanta Police Department. By any surface measure, he is a veteran officer. He knows the streets. He knows the procedures. He has the kind of confidence that comes from nearly 2 decades of authority going unchallenged. But the internal file tells a different story. 3 prior complaints for excessive escalation, all formally reviewed, all quietly closed. In each case, the subjects were black men. In each case, the reviewing supervisor at the time was a colleague who had worked with Harlan for over a decade. The complaints didn't disappear because there was no evidence. They disappeared because no one with authority chose to act on them. Harlan was known inside the precinct by a specific, telling reputation, the officer who never backed down once he had committed to a course of action, even when the facts shifted beneath him, especially then. Backing down, in his framework, was weakness. Weakness invited challenge. Challenge undermined authority. That psychology, that particular dangerous calculus, is the invisible engine running beneath every second of what the dashcam captured on March 18th. His stated reason for the stop: aggressive weaving. No specific Georgia Code violation written down, no pedestrian complaint logged, no radar reading, no near collision documented, just a phrase, vague enough to justify nearly anything, specific enough to sound official. 3 words that would eventually cost the city of Atlanta $2.3 million. Harlan activates his lights after the motorcycle moves between 2 sedans in congested downtown traffic. The dashcam's wide lens records the full picture. What it shows is not aggressive weaving. It is the ordinary, practiced movement of an experienced rider navigating urban gridlock, the kind executed thousands of times daily on Atlanta streets. No near miss, no pedestrian startled, no vehicle forced to brake. Thompson pulls over smoothly, engine ticking, both hands visible on the handlebars before the officer even reaches his door. Harlan approaches slowly, one hand resting on his holster, a posture that is not accidental. It is a communication, a positioning of power before a single word is spoken. License and registration. That weaving nearly clipped someone back there. Thompson answers without raising his voice, without removing his helmet yet. His words arrive like paragraphs from a brief he has filed 100 times. Officer, under the Fourth Amendment and the standard established in Terry v. Ohio, 392 U.S. 1, 1968, you are required to have specific, articulable facts giving rise to reasonable suspicion of criminal activity before initiating a stop. A lane change in congested traffic does not meet that threshold. Please cite the exact Georgia Code section you believe I violated. No aggression, no performance, just case law delivered the way a surgeon delivers a diagnosis, with precision and without drama. Harlan blinks. He is not used to this. In 18 years, very few people in that rider's position have cited Terry v. Ohio back at him. Harlan's neck reddens under the afternoon sun. I don't need a lecture from you, pal. Step off the bike, now. He reaches for the handlebar. Thompson does not flinch. He reaches slowly into his jacket pocket and produces his phone with one hand, keeping the other clearly visible. Sergeant, I am recording this interaction for both our protection. I would also draw your attention to the witnesses who are stopping. He is right. By 14:05:48, the sidewalk is shifting. A woman in a blue sedan 3 cars back has her window down, phone extended. A delivery driver who was loading packages on the curb has stopped completely, phone raised, watching. 2 pedestrians have slowed. A teenager on a bicycle has planted both feet on the pavement and stopped moving. The city is watching. Harlan sees the phones. His jaw tightens, but he does not recalibrate.
The psychology of never backing down is already engaged. Put the phone away. Get off the bike. With respect, Sergeant, I have the legal right to record this interaction in a public space under Georgia law. I am exercising that right. The temperature between them has nothing to do with the Atlanta heat anymore. Thompson reaches deliberately into the inside pocket of his jacket, slowly, both hands visible to every camera. He extends a leather credential wallet, gold seal, official photograph, federal signature. Sergeant, before this proceeds further, here is my identification. I am United States District Judge Elijah Thompson, Northern District of Georgia, Federal Courthouse, Spring Street. The dashcam catches Harlan's physical reaction with documentary precision. A single step backward, involuntary, the body registering what the mind hasn't processed yet. His eyes move from the gold seal to the photograph to the signature and back again. Judge Thompson? The federal courthouse? I didn't realize. There is a pause. It lasts 3 seconds on the timestamp. 3 seconds where the entire trajectory of what follows could have changed. It doesn't.
3 seconds of recalibration. Then Harlan's jaw sets. Ego engages. The math of 18 years of never backing down overrides the gold seal in his hand. Doesn't matter who you are. You argued. You're resisting my lawful commands. You're under arrest. He yanks Thompson off the motorcycle with both hands. The bike crashes sideways with a heavy metallic clang, its engine dying mid-tick against the asphalt. The crowd on the sidewalk audibly reacts, a collective sharp intake, someone saying, "Oh my God," clearly enough that it registers on the dashcam audio. Thompson does not swing, does not run, does not raise his voice. He simply states, on camera, clearly, without pause, "Sergeant Harlan, this arrest lacks probable cause and violates my rights under the 4th and 14th Amendments to the United States Constitution. You will face an internal affairs review, a federal civil rights lawsuit under 42 U.S.C. Section 1983, and possible federal criminal charges under 18 U.S.C. Section 242. I am documenting this moment. So are at least 7 cameras in my immediate line of sight. I strongly recommend you reconsider before you tighten those cuffs." The audio records the thud of the fall, the scrape of boots, the ratchet of the cuffs locking shut, and then Thompson's even, controlled breathing as he continues, not pleading, not panicking, reciting consequences with the calm of a man who has spent a decade preparing for exactly this kind of moment, never imagining it would arrive for him. 40 minutes later, inside the precinct on Peachtree Street, Captain Lena Morales sits down in front of a monitor. She has been told only that a difficult stop has come in and that the subject is claiming to be a federal judge. She cues the dashcam footage. She watches 30 seconds. Then she watches the credential reveal. Then she stops the footage. She turns to look at Harlan with an expression the officers present would later describe as something beyond anger, something quieter and more dangerous than anger. "Derek, what have you done? That is Judge Elijah Thompson. He sits on the federal bench 2 miles from here. Uncuff him immediately. This is not a traffic dispute. This is a constitutional violation that is now on video with civilian witnesses, and it happened at 2 p.m. on a downtown street." The holding area empties quickly. Phones ring. A supervisor calls the chief's office. Morales calls an emergency command meeting. Thompson is released within minutes. No charges filed, no paperwork processed, nothing on record except the footage itself. She meets him at the release door. Her voice is controlled, but something behind her eyes is not. "Your Honor, this was a grave error on our part. I am personally sorry." Thompson looks at her for a moment. Then he says something no one in that precinct expected. "Captain, I accept your apology.
Now please make sure the next person who walks through this building gets the same." He collects his briefcase. He walks out. The internal investigation begins before his motorcycle is off the impound list. Before we go further, stop for a moment, because there is a version of March 18th that happens without the dash cam, without the delivery driver's phone, without the woman in the blue sedan, without the credential wallet with the gold seal. In that version, Elijah Thompson is just a black man on a motorcycle who argued with a police officer and got arrested for it. No federal judge title, no case law cited at the curb, no $2.3 million settlement, no DOJ investigation. Just a booking record, a public defender if he's lucky, a court date months away, a job missed, a reputation damaged, a story that never leaves the precinct. That version of March 18th happened to Marcus Webb, 34, a high school science teacher from East Atlanta, 14 months before Thompson's stop, 2 miles away, same precinct, no camera footage ever recovered. Webb spent 19 hours in holding on a charge of failure to comply before his case was dismissed. He lost his substitute teaching contract during the delay. His appeal for compensation went nowhere. It happened to Darnell Cooper, 41, a licensed electrician who was pulled over 3 times in 8 months on the same stretch of highway, 0 citations that held up, 2 nights in holding, 1 job terminated for unreliability while he waited for hearings. It happened to Angela Reeves, 28, a nursing student stopped walking home from a night shift and detained for 40 minutes while her ID was verified against a suspect description that bore no resemblance to her. None of them made the news. None of them had a dash cam. None of them had a gold seal. The Thompson Civil Rights Defense Fund, built entirely from his $2.3 million settlement, has already taken on 12 cases like these in its first month. 12 people for whom the system worked once a lawyer arrived. The fund's operating principle is one sentence, written by Thompson himself. The Constitution does not require a credential wallet. It requires a country willing to honor it. The U.S. Department of Justice Civil Rights Division opened a full pattern or practice investigation within days of the incident. Their preliminary findings, released in early April, were not about Sergeant Derek Harlan. They were about a system that made Derek Harlan possible. 15 documented cases of unwarranted stops targeting African American motorists in Harlan's precinct over the previous 18 months. Stop rates for black drivers running 32% higher than the city's demographics warranted. Body cam audio in 4 separate cases containing racially charged language that had been reviewed during routine audits and flagged as not actionable by supervising officers who are now themselves under review. 3 prior complaints about Harlan specifically, each reviewed by colleagues, each closed without consequence, were re-examined. Investigators found that in every case, the reviewing supervisor had personally vouched for Harlan's conduct in writing without viewing the full footage. In 2 cases, the footage had been marked as unavailable in the log. It was later found on a server that had not been decommissioned. The DOJ report used a phrase that appeared 11 times in its 94 pages: systemic deficiencies in training and supervision. Not one bad officer, a system that trained bad outcomes and supervised them into silence. The Atlanta Police Department announced 6 structural reforms implemented within 60 days. Mandatory 16-hour annual implicit bias and cultural competency training for every sworn officer. Written probable cause statements required for every traffic stop, reviewed by a supervisor within 24 hours. An independent civilian oversight board with full subpoena power. AI-assisted dashcam systems in every patrol vehicle, programmed to automatically flag potential escalations in real time. A targeted recruitment campaign to increase minority officer representation by 25% within 2 years. A mandatory ride-along program pairing patrol officers with local federal judges and civil rights attorneys. These are not small changes. They are, on paper, significant. But here is the question the reforms don't answer, the one that Marcus Webb and Darnell Cooper and Angela Reeves are still waiting on. What happens to the cases that happened before the reforms? What accountability exists for the 15 documented stops and the unknown number that were never documented at all that occurred while the system was deficient? Compensation? Expungement? A phone call? The DOJ report is ongoing. That question is still open. There is a dimension to this story that has received almost no attention. After March 18th, Judge Elijah Thompson returned to the bench. He continues to preside over cases involving police conduct. He has not recused himself. He has not been asked to recuse himself by any party, because legally there is no basis for recusal. A judge's personal experience with a constitutional violation does not create conflict of interest. It creates context. But that context now sits in that courtroom every single day. When an officer takes the stand in Thompson's court and testifies about a furtive movement or reasonable suspicion or failure to comply, the judge hearing that testimony has felt what those phrases mean when they're applied without evidence. He has heard the cuffs click. He has felt the asphalt under his boots. Several defense attorneys in the Northern District have noted in the months since that Thompson's written opinions on Fourth Amendment questions have become more precise, not more biased, but more precisely demanding of specific, articulable facts, more insistent on the actual standard Terry v. Ohio requires, rather than the loose invocation of it that courtrooms had grown accustomed to accepting. He is, by every account, a better judge than he was on March 17th.
The woman in the blue sedan, her name is Priya Nair, 31, a pediatric nurse heading home after a 12-hour shift, posted her footage online at 3:14 p.m. on March 18th, less than 90 minutes after the stop. She has been asked repeatedly whether she was approached afterward. 2 officers came to my window while I was still filming, she said in a later interview. They asked me to please move along. I told them I was legally parked and legally recording. They left, I stayed. The delivery driver, James O'Coffer, 44, who has worked the downtown Atlanta route for 6 years, said he recognized from the first 30 seconds that something was wrong. I've seen a lot of stops on this route, he said. I know what a stop looks like when there's a real reason. This didn't look like that, so I stayed. Neither Nair nor O'Coffer were subpoenaed. Neither was called as a witness in the internal investigation. Their footage was logged as corroborating evidence alongside the dashcam, and then the dashcam told the story in court, because dashcams are official record. Priya Nair's footage has 4.1 million views on its own. She has not been compensated, recognized, or thanked officially by the city. James O'Coffer went back to his delivery route the next morning. Sergeant Derek Harlan is unemployed. He issued a public statement 11 days after his termination. I allowed personal frustration to override my training and my procedure. I am seeking counseling. I accept responsibility for my actions. He has not been criminally charged. The DOJ review of his conduct is ongoing. People who worked with him for years describe him in almost identical terms: dedicated, consistent, impossible to move once he had decided something. One former colleague, speaking anonymously, said, "Derek wasn't cruel, he just had a framework, and the framework never updated. He decided who a person was in the first 5 seconds, and everything after that was just confirmation." That framework, applied to a federal judge with a dash cam and 7 civilian witnesses, produced a $2.3 million settlement and a DOJ investigation.
Applied for 18 months to Marcus Webb and Darnell Cooper and Angela Reeves and 11 others, it produced nothing, no record, no consequence, no accountability. The only variable was the camera. In a rare interview given 3 weeks after the stop, Judge Thompson was asked whether he felt the public response to his case was different because of his position. He answered without hesitation, yes, and that difference is the problem, not the solution. This was never about special treatment for a man in a robe. A robe doesn't make constitutional rights more real. It makes violations more visible. That visibility is what produced the accountability you've seen. But visibility should not be a credential you earn. It should be a right every person in this country is born with. What happened to me happened because of who I am. What concerns me, what should concern every person watching this, is how many times it has happened to people because of who they are. Stopped, questioned, detained, and humiliated not for what they did, but for what they looked like doing it. If it can happen to a federal judge on camera at 2 in the afternoon on a major downtown street, imagine what happens at midnight. Imagine what happens on a side road. Imagine what happens when the camera is off and the person in those cuffs doesn't know Terry v. Ohio. He paused. The recording made the difference in my case. Transparency is the first, non-negotiable step toward justice. But transparency requires infrastructure. It requires cameras that stay on, oversight boards with actual power, civilians who know their rights and aren't afraid to exercise them, and a system that treats a bus driver's son from Cascade Heights the same way it would treat any man who happens to be wearing a robe. He paused once more. We are not there yet, but we have a record now, and records, in my experience, have a way of being read eventually. The dashcam footage has passed 8.7 million views. Protests gathered outside Atlanta City Hall within 48 hours. Congressional hearings on nationwide bodycam standards are scheduled. 3 other major American cities have cited the Atlanta reforms in their own policy reviews. The Thompson Civil Rights Defense Fund has taken on 12 cases and counting. Marcus Webb got a lawyer. His case is active. Darnell Cooper's record is being reviewed. Angela Reeves is waiting. And somewhere in this city tonight, in every city, someone is being pulled over. Maybe there's a reason, maybe there isn't. Maybe there's a camera, maybe there isn't. The Constitution doesn't change based on any of those variables, but the outcome still does. That is the story. Not one man's story, not one city's failure. The ongoing, documented, still unresolved distance between what the law says and what the street delivers. That distance has a name. It's called accountability, and it is still, in every meaningful sense, under construction. What is the single biggest thing this story changes about how you see your own rights in a traffic stop? Drop it in the comments, not a reaction, a thought. Because the people who needed this story most are not judges. They are the people who didn't know they had the right to record, the people who didn't know they could cite a law, the people who backed down because they didn't know they didn't have to. Share this with one of them. Subscribe for more documented cases, the ones with cameras, the ones without, and the space between them where accountability is still being built. We'll see you in the next one.